Number 25 here is asking us to determine whether or not there exists a constant c such that these four things here are possible. And the fact that they worded the question that way and then gave us four different questions really makes me think that at least one of these is going to end up not being possible, but I'm getting ahead of myself. So they gave us an equation here, x plus cy is equal to 1, and what you might notice is that this equation right here is in standard form, and nobody likes standard form, except people that were typing math textbooks in the 1950s. All four of these questions, I take that back, three of these four questions, A, C, and D, are all asking us a question about the slope of the line, and coming up with slope out of standard form isn't really something that we like to do. So, what I think we're going to do instead, guys, and this is just a great lesson here, okay? If you don't like what people are saying, change the conversation. If you don't like the format of this line, change it to something you guys like better. And I would imagine most of you guys would prefer slope-intercept form. So I'm going to solve this equation for y by bringing the x to the other side, and we'll get cy is equal to, it's 1 minus x. Most of us would probably like that better as a negative x plus 1. And then we're going to divide every single term here by c. And we're going to get y is equal to, okay, not a whole lot going on right here. I'd probably write this as a negative 1 over c multiplied by x, so that my slope there, the coefficient of x, is negative 1 over c, and my y-intercept, can't do anything to clean that up, is 1 over c. So what we have right here that I'm boxing up right now is the same equation we started with, but in a form that's a little bit simpler to deal with. So let's move on to part A here, guys. Is it possible to find a value of c, right? That's what we're trying to do here, that will make the slope of this line equal to 4? Well, again, the slope of this line in slope-intercept form here is negative 1 over c. So I just want to know, can I take negative 1 over c, set that equal to 4, and then find a value of c that will make this work? Notice it doesn't actually ask you to find the value of c, it just says determine whether there is or not. Well, the simplest way to prove that something exists is to find it. So let's solve this equation for c. What I would really do is an old trick I teach my geometry kids. The denominator on one side of an equation and the numerator on the other can just flip-flop here anytime. So we'd end up then, guys, real quick and easy with c is equal to negative 1/4. Several other ways you could have come up with that answer, like multiplying both sides by c, but anyway, there it is. So if c were equal to negative 1/4, then yes, the slope of this line would be 4. So again, it's worded as a yes-no question, so I'm going to say that A is a yes. How about B? We now want to know, is it possible to find a value of c that would make this line pass through the point 3, 1? And for that purpose, I'd actually go back, let me switch colors here, guys. I'd actually go back to the original form when the equation was written in standard form. This is our x value, this is our y value. So let's plug them in and see if we can make this work. And I think we will be able to. Our x value here we said was 3, so it's 3 plus c times a y value here of 1. Does that equal 1? All right, well, 1 times c is just plain old c, and I'd subtract a 3 from both sides, and that 1 minus 3 is going to get us negative 2. So if I have found a value of c that makes this work, then the answer here for B is yes as well. So 2 for 2 so far. Let's see what happens here in the third part. I'll switch back to purple right here. They want to know, can we make it so that this line is horizontal? And what do we know about horizontal lines? I hope we remember this, guys. The slope of a horizontal line is always equal to 0. So we would take our slope here, which we found right here to be the expression negative 1 over c, and we want to know, is there a value of c that makes this slope equal 0? Now you could do the same little trick I just did right here in part A. You could switch the c and the 0 here, and you're going to run into a problem right away. You're going to get now that c is equal to negative 1 over 0, and hopefully we know by this point, guys, that any number divided by 0 is undefined. And for that reason, the answer to part C here is no. There's no value of c you could put into this equation that would make this line horizontal. That would just make the x drop out in the equation right there. However, D is a little twist on that same concept now. Now they want to know, is there a c value that would make this line vertical? Well, what do we know about vertical lines? Vertical lines have a slope that's undefined. So we would want -1 over c to be undefined? That's what we're going for right here. And it's a weird question because we hardly ever ask you to find this in math, but just ask yourself now, what value of c would make this undefined? Well, we kind of talked about that right here. The only way the answer to a division problem is undefined is if your denominator, which is your dividend, is equal to 0. So right now, c equaling 0, then everybody, would make the slope of this line undefined, which would make the line itself vertical. So the answer to part D is yes. Real quick, let me play with that same idea a little bit more. If c were equal to 0, let me plug that back into this equation right over here, and we would end up with x plus 0y is equal to 1. Well, 0 times y is just 0, so you just end up with x equals 1, and hopefully we've learned this from Algebra 1 and Algebra 2, and you saw it in geometry, and you saw it in pre-calc. Anytime you have x equals a constant, that is the equation of a vertical line right there. So that's what we were going for. However, there's nothing we could do that would make that happen here in part C, so that what? The x term would cancel out, and you'd be left with just y equals a constant. That's going to be impossible no matter how long you try, so that's why C was a no. Okay, so there's our answers to 25. It's a yes, yes, no, and another yes.